All right, I think we'll go ahead and kick things off. Thank you so much, everyone, for making time in your day to join us. The webinar today is going to be on VC data collection best practices. It's going to be a mix of tips and best practices, but also a product webinar. So we'll actually dive into a demo at the second half of our time together. So just starting with intros, if you've joined us for a webinar before, you're probably used to seeing our CEO's face, Mike Pruce. Today you're going to be with me. So my name is Belle Rab, and I am leading the go-to-market efforts for our investor product. And also Nick Wieldy has joined us as well. He's going to be off camera. Some of you may recognize him though as our investor success manager. I know a lot of you are actually customers that joined us today, which is really exciting. Happy to have you guys here. And then there are some people who are new to Visible. So just wanted to provide a bit of context before we hop in. So today we're going to be focusing on our investor product, which is all about post-investment monitoring and reporting. But just a little bit of context on Visible, we'll zoom out and I'll just share that we were started in 2015, became profitable in 2017, widely used product all around the world, so in 47 different countries. And we have 350 funds using our portfolio monitoring reporting solution, and then over 3,000 founders using our investor updates and fundraising tools for startup founders. And then just featuring some of our customers here at the bottom. So just a bit of housekeeping. So Nick Wieldy is standing by to respond to any questions. We will be using the Q&A function at the bottom of Zoom. So if you can see that right now, just feel free to type in into that Q&A feature there at the bottom, and we'll respond either throughout the webinar or hang tight for questions at the end. We will be doing a poll just here in a minute. Really helpful if you guys can participate. I know you're all in front of a computer, so the more that you can respond and engage with us is really helpful. We'll share that data back with you, so we'll do that in just a moment here. And then finally, this webinar will be recorded, and so we'll send that out just about a day after the webinar here today. All right, so where we're headed with the next, let's see, about 50 minutes together. So we are going to, just in a moment, do a poll on the why behind VC portfolio data collection. So why it's important to you guys, why it's valuable. Then we're going to be talking about how portfolio data is actually used by VCs. And then we are going to talk about how to set yourself up for data collection success, whether this is new to you, something you're just setting up at your VC firm, or whether you've been doing this for a while. We're going to also talk through some portfolio data collection tips. And then we're going to end with a demo. So I'll actually walk you through how to set up a best practice data request in Visible. And then also, because I think it's interesting to kind of just show some examples of other types of data requests that you can use Visible for. All right, so hopefully I can get this all to work. If not, Nick, can I have you start the poll at the bottom of Zoom? We'll see if this gets working just fine, but we're going to, oh, I actually found it. Let's see. Go ahead and launch the poll. So you guys should all be able to see this on your screen now. So the question is about, why is collecting structured data from portfolio companies important? And so we have 6 different options listed out. If you want to vote for your top 3, so thinking about you at your firm, you guys all joined this webinar, learning how to, do best practices with collecting structured data. So why is this most important to your firm? Is it to understand company performance, inform investment decisions? I won't read through all the other options, but just give you guys about 30 seconds, 60 seconds to respond to the poll. There's high participation. This makes me happy. We will share this result back with you guys. So thank you for participating. We'll do about 10 more seconds. So top 3 reasons that for your firm, it's important to collect structured data. All right. final answers coming in, and I'll go ahead and end the poll. So thank you guys all for participating. Again, we'll share that data back with you likely tomorrow in our follow-up email. So historically, we've asked the question, what are Visible users doing with their portfolio data? And just want to start with some context here. This is a question we asked about 2 years ago, though, so that's why we're interested in the updated data. So top reasons that we've heard before is all around increasing internal firm transparency. So wanting to have data to actually inform what's commonly called like an internal portfolio review meeting at funds, and just to increase your understanding across your team about how your portfolio is performing. Second to that is to actually improve portfolio company support. So hard to step in and provide valuable support to companies if you actually don't know, what's going on, what they're struggling with, what the latest update is. So that's a second reason investors are collecting data. And then third is actually using the information that they are hearing or the updates that they're hearing from their portfolio companies to provide meaningful and engaging updates back to their LPs. So those are the top 3 reasons that we've heard historically. A question that we get often as we've onboarded over 350 funds now is actually which metrics should we be tracking? I think there's definitely a lot of interest in doing portfolio monitoring well, and we hear this question from emerging managers and also from established funds. So what our data shows is these are the top 6 most common metrics to be collecting. Feel free to take a screenshot, but we will send this deck out later. Top 6 metrics is, of course, revenue, and then cash balance, monthly net burn rate, runway, net income, and headcount. 2 things to note here, where we see portfolio companies, investors get tripped up the most is actually around net burn rate. So really important, and we would always advise our customers or any investor just to be really, or to include a description with all your metrics. So it reduces back and forth between you and your companies about how, should I be calculating this? How should we be presenting this to our investors? So always include a description for your metrics that you're asking for, especially for this burn rate metric. And then I forgot my second point, so we'll keep moving, and if it comes back to me, I'll share it later. All right, so moving on to the next idea of making sure your data collection processes are founder friendly. So our data shows that actually most investors are asking for about 5 to 10 metrics, and that's definitely what we would encourage all investors to do. So making sure that these are top of mind metrics is also really important. So I think it can be exciting to think about all the different things you could ask your companies for, but just being mindful of founders' times, your portfolio company, whoever the reporting point of contact is, being mindful of their time so they can get back to doing what they do best. So what do we mean by top of mind metrics? These should be metrics that they can access or either know right away within a minute or 2 after reviewing your request that you sent to them. And what's nice about Visible, and this goes back to my point actually that I was trying to make for these other metrics, is you actually can set up formulas within Visible. So you can ask for these 6 metrics, but then you can create all these secondary metrics using formulas within Visible. So just something to be mindful of when you're collecting data is, do you really need to ask for that metric, or can you calculate it based off of other things that you've already asked for and have on file? We do see that it's pretty common for investors to ask for 1 to 2 qualitative questions. A really common one is, how can we be helpful this quarter? And would just encourage you as an investor to be a little bit more descriptive about the ways in which you can be helpful. So as an open-ended question, companies could write in anything or they could write in nothing. But if your firm's or your platform specialty is around recruiting or fundraising support, just be more prescriptive about, how can we help you with fundraising this quarter? Is it reviewing their pitch deck? Is it making introductions? So definitely, I think it is common to ask for qualitative questions, but the more that you can be descriptive about in which ways you can actually be helpful, that's when we see that being a more fruitful engagement and question to include in your regular reporting. Third thing here is just letting companies choose their own reporting currency, more relevant for international investors. In Visible, we support multi-currency conversion. So just letting your companies control over how they want to be sharing data with you is really important. And then going on to fourth point, making sure you have the right points of contact. There's a stage in a company's growth where if you're investing at the pre-seed seed stage, maybe it's the CEO that actually is still doing investor reporting, but they're going to eventually hand that off to a CFO, VP of finance, and just making sure you're on top of like when that appropriate change to a different point of contact is happening. And that's how you can get higher response rates, and just being mindful of how your portfolio companies operate. And then finally, don't make your companies create a new account or add something to their tech stack that they don't want to. Of course, with Visible, you don't have to have your companies create a Visible account to be able to have them share data with you. There's a link-based form that doesn't require an account, and that's actually how we see most portfolio companies sharing data with investors. And so just would encourage you to not, make your companies add something to their tech stack if they don't want to. All right, so even if we're working with established investors, what we hear is, what are other investors doing, right? Want to make sure that you guys are not like straying too far, or asking for too ridiculous of metrics or anything like that. So just to kind of standardize it, we pulled some data from Visible and just wanted to share what's common when it comes to data collection practices. So about 67% of investors are requesting data quarterly. To me, this makes a lot of sense. You're asking your founders or your portfolio companies to sit down once a quarter and share, here's our 5 to 10 metrics, here's how we could use help, instead of asking them to do it once a month, which is just a little bit more burdensome, but understanding that, like, depending on the stage of companies and how quickly things are changing, maybe monthly makes sense. And so at the earlier stages when we see monthly requests, but it is most common to have a quarterly exchange for reporting purposes instead of monthly. Most investors, again, are asking for a qualitative update. So if you're doing that, definitely in the norm. Actually, 50% of investors are asking for files. This is great because you can ask for companies to share maybe 3 metrics, but then ask for them to upload their balance, statement or balance sheet, things like that, to kind of supplement the metrics that you're asking for. A few other things here, asking for a yes/no question. Within Visible is really common. One that we see often is like, are you planning on raising additional financing within the next 6 months? Easy yes/no question, helpful for the investor, easy for founders to respond to. I'll show you how to set that up within Visible here in just a moment. And then with Visible, of course, there's automated reminders. So just wanted to share some data around like how many investors are setting up. So on average, within Visible, investors are sending out about 3.75 reminders. But maybe not surprising that the more reminders that you send out, the higher response rates you get from companies. And actually, a more recent product update that we've released is the ability to send out bulk reminders just to the companies who haven't responded yet. And that's something that you can do at any point. And I'll show you how to do that within the platform in just a moment. So now we're talking about, before you even send out a request or ask for data from your companies, here are some things that you can do to set yourself up for data collection success. So if collecting structured data is important for you and your firm, here's some advice that we have for you. One is, we see actually some investors outline requirements in a side letter. So this is outside normal deal docs, just outlining specific requirements that you have in a side letter. between you and your companies, just kind of setting those expectations earlier on. This is more common with impact investors, and would advise you to, of course, work with someone from a legal background to set this up. But this is something that can just be helpful if reporting requirements are really important to your firm. Would explore setting up a side letter. The second thing is incorporating expectations into the onboarding process. So if you don't already have a formal onboarding process set up at your VC firm, we actually have resources on that we can share afterward. But this looks like, okay, deal has closed. Now you are establishing this relationship with a company that's now part of your portfolio. And it can be a great idea to have either a sit-down conversation, a Zoom conversation, but just weaving in what your reporting expectations are from the very start. So just saying, hey, on a quarterly basis, on this date, we're asking for these metrics. Here's why it's important to our firm, and then communicating what you're doing with the data. Is this for portfolio support? Hopefully. Is this for LP reporting? Definitely. And just kind of explain the why behind the reporting expectations. But again, the idea is to set those expectations early on, and then have a process in place from day one to collect data. So whether you have 2 companies, 200, it's going to be way easier if from your very first initial investments, you were already thinking about data collection, why it's important, all those 6 reasons that we laid out at the beginning in the poll. It's just important to have this process, some sort of process in place from day one, because it's going to be harder, not impossible, but harder to have a behavior change within your portfolio if you weren't, there was no expectations around reporting for the first 3 years, and then all of a sudden you need to collect data. It's just going to be a harder, again, behavior change within your portfolio. And then finally, just making sure that deadlines make sense for your portfolio companies. What we advise for quarterly requests is having the due date about 2 weeks after quarter close. Right? You don't want to set it for like the day after quarter close and, force your companies to scramble to close their books and have all this information ready before they actually have it ready. And so just giving them ample amount of time, asking for feedback around like the deadline to make sure it's appropriate for you, like for your companies, but just making sure that you have an appropriate cadence set up with your portfolio companies. All right, so now switching to a more exciting part of today's session, we'll actually be hopping into the product here in just a bit. So I'll be walking through Invisible, how to leverage our latest product updates to streamline the way that you collect data. So just talking through them really briefly here, I'm going to be walking through how to collect budget versus actuals within a request. This is something that we've supported for a while, but we've made it easier. So I'll walk you through how to do this. Reopening a request, we'll touch on that. Sending those one-off reminders kind of on any day that you want to do that. So any day of your choosing as necessary. A custom metric assignment preview, request analytics summary, and then this one we actually rolled out a while ago, so adding multiple points of contact, but want to touch on it because it has been missed, and it can make it really effective though during the request process, adding multiple points of contact to a request. All right, so Nick, can I just get confirmation that you can see that I switched my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
You can see it.
Sounds great. So now we're looking at a visible account. And what I'm going to do is talk through some of those changes that I just outlined. So first thing that I want to talk about is actually here in the portfolio level. These are all my portfolio companies. So this is what you see right when you log in. And if you haven't done this, so if you're a current customer, you haven't done this in a while, it's a great idea to make sure your contacts are up to date for reporting purposes. And so I've gone here to a company's profile and just want to highlight that you can add additional points of contact. So maybe this is the CEO, wants to be in copy to know that it's, the request period has come up, but the CFO is actually the primary point of contact. So again, can just add multiple points of contact here to a company's profile. So all the contacts listed here will actually receive a request notification. Actually, anyone can respond. And but just good to notify who needs to be notified from the portfolio side. So that's how you can add multiple points of contact. So now we'll go ahead and go back to actually the request section. So building that request out with you guys. And so I'll go ahead and create a new request here. So I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this visible capital quarterly request. These requests are designed to recur. So wouldn't suggest, including Q2 in the title here, because then when it's Q3, it's not going to make sense for your companies. So just deciding on a recurring request title here. Here you're deciding on who the request should look like it's coming from. Sometimes it can be beneficial to make it look like it's coming from someone more senior at the VC firm, or rather maybe someone who has more of a rapport built out with all the portfolio companies, things like that. So this is why you can actually change who the sender looks like it's coming from. Here's where you're deciding who on your team wants to be notified when companies actually complete a request. And then something that's new is you can actually flag this on or off. And this is going to be a reminder that's sent to all the people that are listed here 5 days before your companies are notified. Why this is important is because sometimes investors do want to make changes to a request before the next, let's say quarter's request is sent out. And so this is going to notify you via email, and it's going to say, hey, in 5 days, your companies are going to receive their first request iteration, log in and make any changes before they're notified. So it can be really helpful if you want to customize your messaging or need to add an additional request, an additional metric before your next request is sent out. And then, of course, down here, you're adding which companies you actually want to send the request to. Can use segments here. I'm just going to say, hey, go ahead and send this to all my companies. All right. So here we're deciding on the schedule of a request. We had talked about earlier that it's most common to set up a quarterly request. Best practice is giving companies enough time to actually respond to a request. And we have data that shows that Mondays are great due dates, so for high response rates. So in my version of best practice request, what I'm going to do is actually have a quarterly request, due dates of Monday, and now this is going to recur every 3 months on the 3rd Monday. We also saw that the average number of reminders that gets the highest response rate is actually 6. So that could be include 6 reminders here that you can automatically set up. Or this also includes what I'll show you later is like a bulk notification that can be sent out to all your companies. And so, sorry, yeah, the 6 reminders here, or it can be any one-off one that you send later. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just flag on 4 before and then 2 afterward. This is not extremely new, but sometimes I see this missed in customers who have been with us for a while. So you can customize the body of the email. This can be a great way to add a personal touch, to include instructions, to maybe include a note that says, hey, let us know if the reporting point of contact has changed, something like that. So you can customize these notifications that are sent out via email to your companies, or it's going to default to this one at the bottom here. Just so you guys know, once a request is completed, of course, companies don't receive any more reminders. All right, so now let's go ahead and build out the actual request. So one of the newer features that we've added is the ability to collect multiple periods of data. So we're thinking historical data or projected data, so budget versus actuals. So I've just created this metric block here. And now if I go here to this box, I can do multiple previous periods. So maybe this is the first time I'm sending a request out to this company, and I actually want to gather, 4 previous periods of data. We support up to 6. I'm going to go ahead and grab the 4 here in the drop down. So now when I go to ask for what we consider our core metrics, excellent, I can do that really easily here. And just for example's sake, I'm actually going to grab this metric and I'll show you why in just a moment. So pulling in those 4 previous quarters of historical data, excellent. And I'm actually just going to call this core metrics, and that is looking good. And then I'll go ahead and pull in another metric block. This is going to be projected metrics. And then again, same thing. I can go down here, multiple forecast periods, and can pull in up to 6 periods. So maybe at the first request of the year, you're asking for 4 periods out. So looking for the forecast for the year. And so, but for this one, I'm just going to stick to, actually, yeah, I will do multiple forecast periods. Okay, so pulling in maybe just 2 of those metrics there, for example's sake. So that is covering budget versus actuals and supporting that now in requests. Another thing that I wanted to highlight that's new is this metric here has this indicator next to it. So this metric is not actually assigned to all companies. We've supported that for a while in Visible, but what's new is actually showing you, okay, which companies is this actually assigned to? And let me just click out here a second. And so now I don't have to kind of go back to the metric library to remember, which segment did I apply this to, but can just do a quick gut check here of okay, actually, this metric looks good. I know those are my SaaS companies. Great. Those are the ones that should actually be asked for that metric. So having a preview right there in the request. All right, so next thing is newer. So we've always supported the ability to collect files. I like it when I see requests that look like, investors are asking for 4 metrics, but then to supplement that, they're asking for a file. So kind of reducing how much they're asking for from companies, but then they have those files if they ever do need to reference more metrics in the future. So what's new is the ability to ask for up to 10 files in one block, right? So I can just say here, I'll just say financial statements plus financing docs, and then can include more descriptions down here. So maybe I want a balance sheet, P&L, and also I'll say deal docs from any recent financings in the last quarter. Makes the most sense. Okay, great. So now companies can drop all those files into one block. Before it was multiple blocks. So just a more streamlined, cleaner looking request, easier to digest for your companies. What's nice is if you haven't used this file feature before, as soon as companies upload those files and submit their request, those files actually live on a company's profile. So you don't have to go searching through inboxes and, who has access to that file, where did it go type thing. It just lives on a company's profile. All right. And then we talked about this yes, no question. So just to paint the picture, what is this for? So are you planning on raising additional capital in the next 6 months? Great question. Indicates to you, to investors, the valuation potentially going to change in the 6 months. Do we need to reach out to support? Can we offer to make introductions? Simple question, easy for companies to answer, tells you a lot. And then, of course, we support qualitative questions here. This is where we see investors asking that question. How can we best support you this quarter? And then Bell's VC firm specializes in actually recruiting from a platform perspective. So I can maybe say, like, making any new hires. Do you need us to review any job descriptions, things like that? So adding a description. So this is actually a meaningful question that you're asking companies, and not just too vague and they don't know what to write in there. Also in this text box is where we see investors asking for highs and lows of the quarter. That's probably the most common qualitative question, followed by this: how can we support you best this quarter? If you guys need to change up your requests, do some editing. This is new: collapsing, moving around request blocks, keeping things a bit more organized, easier to manipulate. And with that, I've built out my beautiful request. Go ahead to the next page. This is, of course, where you can preview requests. I'm going to go ahead and set this request live, notify my companies all right now. And then this actually view of requests is newer, cleaner than before. Hope you guys love it. We've heard good feedback. And then just if you click into this iteration, what's nice is you have these analytics here, how many companies have responded before the due date. And as you get submissions in here, you can easily filter who submitted versus who hasn't. So you can look into those accounts, and you can, of course, grab that link, send it out here if you need to, but this filtering is new, especially, this is a nice to have. I would say if you have 10 companies, 15 companies, a have to have. We have some accounts with 300 portfolio companies. So just being able to filter this and easily identify who hasn't responded can be really helpful. Up here, new feature was widely requested. So this is that bulk reminder, right? We have those automated reminders 3 days before, 1 day before. What happens if on the 8th day you need your reporting back? You need to notify just the companies who haven't completed a request yet. So that's what this is for. So you can now send a reminder to all the companies who haven't submitted yet, as you wish, on a day that you choose. The companies aren't going to receive a duplicate reminder, right? So if an automated one already went out that day, they're not going to receive another one. But this one is where you can now send a bulk reminder really easily to all the companies who haven't completed a request. From this view, you can also export responses. If you want to do, more analysis outside of Visible, or just need an export to keep on file, totally fine. This is where you can export request responses from here. The final thing that I actually have to show you guys related to requests is how to open up a request. So I've just clicked on that company's profile. Excellent. And so now I'm looking at the company's profile, all their request iterations. That looks good. And if a company has completed a request, and then they let you know, hey, I actually submitted Q1 data instead of Q2, my mistake. What you can do is you can say, that's okay, let me go ahead and open that request for you, send it back to the company to have them complete their data. One thing to note here is if it's a link-based form, so they don't have an account with Visible, it does open up the entire request for them to respond to again, enter new data. So they'll do that. If they do have an account with Visible, then when you reopen a request, it actually puts the request back into draft form. So if they just need to edit, one metric was off, things like that, then maybe you have them make sure that they have an account or something like that, just so that they can edit just that one piece of data. Otherwise, if it really is a circumstance where just one metric needs to be edited, just as a reminder, you own this data set after companies submit it and can easily edit the data here. And we allow you to actually customize this view. So this is new as well. So for customers who are on the call, this used to be a more static window showing 24 periods. You can now see all of your data in one view, edit that as you wish, and then of course you control this data set. So if you need to make changes, can do that really easily here, and you will see an audit log on who's made changes within the account. All right. So a lot of information about requests. If this is overwhelming and you want to dive into this more, we are more than happy to set up calls, whether you're a current customer. Nick here is going to be your guy to set up a call with him and kind of dive into requests within your account. If you're newer to Visible, would love to get to know your firm and talk about the request process and what would make the most sense for your request process. So we were just talking about typical reporting, financial metrics requests. The final things that I wanted to actually end on is actually different types of requests that we see investors using Visible for. So not everyone does this. The smart ones do, just kidding. But just thinking about like other ways that you can use Visible to collect data from your companies. Here's some of the things that we see people doing. So one, using requests to set up an onboarding intake form, right? So you just invested in a company and now you have a set of questions of we need to gather, contact information, mailing addresses, things like that. Can use a request to streamline that process. And then, of course, we have investors that are using Visible for financial metrics, but also coupling that with any diversity or impact metrics that they need to collect or for ESG reporting. Just to kind of add color to this, I have some of these within my account here. So this first one that I'm showing you is an example request. This is an onboarding request. I'm going to follow up with these examples, but here's just to show you what it looks like built out. So you may have questions, where can we send your swag? You just invested in this company, want to make them feel special, part of the community. So gathering physical mailing addresses, gathering logos for marketing purposes, and you get the idea there. So thinking of Visible requests as onboarding intake forms. And then these are examples of ESG requests, lengthier, but this is actually the 500 startups annual ESG request. So this includes a lot of questions in here. If you have an ESG focus, can send this example to you guys as well for you to reference. And then, sorry, I'm switching between a lot of tabs. Hopefully you guys are still with me. This last one, Capital T is a customer of ours. This is their annual ESG request that they send out. They got 100% response rate, which is excellent. And just to show you kind of how you can incorporate this into your regular reporting processes. So you don't have to do this, outside and create something new for your companies to get familiar with, but this can actually be done within Visible as well. All right, so I saw just a few questions come in from Q&A. I'll be taking a look at those now. Maybe I will not, I'll just have this screen up here. So if you guys have just a few more minutes, we're just going to stick around and do Q&A and then let you guys get on with your day. Let's see here. Okay, so had a question come in. Do you get a notification for the change metric when a portfolio company asks to reopen a request to make a change? And does the first request completed stay invisible too? excellent question. We talked about that just a little bit, but to reiterate kind of how that process works. So we are looking within a company's account. They said, hey, Belle, I filled out Q1 data, not Q2 data. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm going to send you this request back, reopen the request. And oh, I think that's because it just sent out today, but reopens the request. And then what you can do is you're just going to, so one, companies aren't notified, but you get the link to be able to send to those companies. And so what that looks like is now you have that, well, I think I opened the wrong request iteration in my example, but essentially you now have a link that you can send to companies. And that's going to be done via email, via Slack, via WhatsApp, wherever your companies are hanging out. So companies actually aren't automatically notified. So that's just something to be aware of there. So that's sent via email. And then the first request actually doesn't stay invisible. So it will kind of override what was in there before. It's possible, you know, there's different workarounds there, right? If a company has a account with Visible, it's set in draft form, and so really they're only changing what needs to be changed. Also good to think through about whether you really need to reopen the request, or if it's just a change in the data, is that something that you can just easily manually do from your side without needing to kind of start the request process over. So different options there. All right. Audience question, does Visible integrate with other platforms? To date, we have one, well, we do integrate with Google Sheets with pulling data into Visible. And then we have another integration that we will be releasing here soon that we're excited to share with you guys. But to date, don't integrate with Coda or Omni yet, but thank you for the question. All right. So if there's no other questions, just wanted to thank you guys again for your time today. Nick and I will make ourselves available to any other questions. So just feel free to send us an email. Our emails are listed here. Again, if you want to get to know Visible for the first time, reach out to us. Happy to set up a call. We'll connect you with our great sales team. For a customized demo. If you have questions, you're a current customer, please reach out to Nick, who can triage those questions. And then we will be sending out this recording within a day. I just had one other question come in, and then I'll let you guys go. So can you please repeat the examples of the most popular qualitative questions? First one, highs and lows. So asking for qualitative updates. People want to pull those into dashboards in Visible. If you're curious about, you know, dashboards, what does data analysis look like within Visible? We actually did that webinar a few months ago now. Reach out to us if you have questions though. So those qualitative responses can live within a dashboard within Visible, or they're shared, of course, with LPs for LP reporting. So that first qualitative question that is most common is highs and lows. So what's your highs and lows from the previous quarter? What I like to see, and to kind of get better responses from companies, is actually to use a description. So sometimes when you say, you know, what's your highs and lows from the quarter, you're going to get one company that sends you 4 words and another one that sends you like 4 paragraphs. And so within Visible, when you ask that question, maybe I can just pull this up here really quickly. So we talked about asking the qualitative question. I'll just add this in here. So this would say highs and lows. What I like to see is like, what are you from a, you know, your firm, what do you care about? So I would do this. I would do, tell me about team updates. I would say, tell me about product updates. I also care about maybe sales. And finally, I want to hear about fundraising updates. Just the more specific you can get, the better responses you'll get from companies that kind of just need some guidance on like, what do I even share with investors? So that's what I would recommend there. First Okay, that's the most common question. Second one is, how can we best support you this quarter? That's the one that we already talked about. Again, using that description to get more rich and helpful responses there. Okay, excellent. Thank you for your questions and your participation. We'll let you guys go. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Belle.